What's up, guys? X Ricci here, bringing you episode 5 of the F1 podcast. And yes, episode 5. We just want to say thank you guys so much for the support. We've been doing this for the last 4 weeks, and we've just been blown away. So I'm probably going to be saying a lot of thank yous in this video or just in general. So thank you. With that, it is episode 5 with my co-host, Andrew.
What's up, good people?
And Erica.
Buongiorno tutti.
Bene. Oh, that was good. As you can tell by our beautiful Italian, we are talking about the Italian Grand Prix. This is the post-race review. And let me tell you, there is a lot to dive into today's pod episode. As you can tell, this is how it's going. Anyways, so on Sunday, we had Daniel Ricciardo win his first race with McLaren.
Who said that was a good idea?
Yeah, well, we're getting there. Don't you worry. Lando Norris coming P2 for McLaren. Valtteri Bottas from the back of the grid from 20th to 3rd. Charles Leclerc, Ferrari 4th. Sergio Perez 5th. Carlos Sainz 6th. Lance Stroll, Aston Martin 7th. Fernando Alonso, Alpine 8th. George Russell, Mr. Saturday, coming P9, and Esteban Ocon P10. So you're probably asking me, Jonathan, what happened to Verstappen and Hamilton? Well, let me tell you, they crashed, and it is the subject of today's controversy and also that race's controversy. So before further ado, congratulations to Daniel Ricciardo for winning his first race with McLaren, but I'm going to turn it over to the team. What were your thoughts of the race? Let's start with, Andrew. What did you have to say?
I don't know if someone on the last podcast episode said Danny Rick was going to be a podium, and 2 people looked at the person like he was an idiot. So I'm just saying, that person must be seeing the stars align or reading the Magic 8-Ball, because Danny Rick dominated this entire weekend.
Did you even have him on your fantasy?
I had McLaren and I had Norris on the fantasy. All right. I had to back it up a little bit. I wanted Danny Rick to prove himself first before he makes it onto the fantasy team. You can't just start without proving yourself worthy. And, after this week, Danny Rick is going back on it. You can tell it was his time this weekend to really push the envelope here at McLaren. I think it was long overdue, and very happy to see the shoey back on the podium again.
Oh, that is a stinky shoey. Erica, what were your thoughts of this week's race?
I thought it was a super fun race to watch, honestly. I mean, anytime you get a track like this where we've got some congestion coming out of chicanes and turns, but you can really kind of build up on some of those long straights, you're in for some great racing, and that's what we saw for sure. I was so impressed with McLaren this weekend. I mean, this is the first time since 2010 they've had a 1-2 finish on a podium. So incredible work from Zach Brown and everyone over at McLaren building up the team over the last few years. And I have to eat my own words. Last week, I was talking about how Danny Rick needs to step back and accept the fact that he's an older guy and kind of the number 2 driver on the team. Nope. And he just came out flying and crushed it. So, I'll be the first to admit he's not down and out yet. He's not someone that we need to just kind of put on the shelf and only take down when needed to do some defending or something like that. He's still got it. And,
in fairness, I think he listened to the podcast last week and heard you chat crap about him.
There's this one girl in Canada, man, and she drives me nuts. I'm going to prove her wrong.
Exactly. That was it.
That was the tipping motivation for doing so well in the sprint on Saturday. Oh my goodness. I mean, if that happened, I'd be incredibly flattered. And also Danny, slide into my DMs any day for crying out loud. But
Danny Rick, if you're listening to this pod, come on in. We would love to host you. Just saying.
CCC.
I'll do if you come on, I will do a shoey for you.
Oh man, So aside from the racing, I mean, we saw some unfortunate incidents on lap one with like AlphaTauri, both cars having to be retired, and obviously a few notable crashes, not even just in the first lap, but later on as well, which I'm sure we'll get into. The celebrations were just so fun. I mean,
Yeah.
last year it was great to watch Gasly celebrate his first victory, and it was no exception this year with the whole McLaren team up there. Zach Brown was just having a time, and it was great.
I love the radios after the race, and it's like Lando's talking to his engineer and Danny Rick's like talking to his engineer, and then you just hear Zach Brown in the background just screaming. Dude, it was just amped up, and right, deservedly so. He's taken McLaren from like, below what expectations were, and I think he definitely exceeded it this week. And it's crazy in the sense too that, Danny Rick got the fastest lap on the last lap of the race. So you can't say it was a fluke. They literally had the fastest car this weekend. And
I
that
think
is like an eye opener to me. And I think it should be an eye opener to Red Bull and to Mercedes. I know it's back far in the championship, but it's that guy is right. Someone's right behind you now. That's 100 points back, but like they are, I think they should start putting them on notice for next year and for the rest of the season.
look, and this is like what the sport wants is, you have 4 competitive teams with Mercedes, Red Bull, and McLaren just duking it out. Like obviously we talked about early in the season how this season has really opened up the podiums, because how many now? There's been like 10 or 15 different drivers who've at least had one podium appearance, and it's not always been Lewis. Sorry, my phone just went off. Lewis, Bottas, and Verstappen, and now you're getting people like, because I think you said this is 2000. Oh yeah, last time they were on the podium was 2010, I think.
2012, I
yeah.
think, was the last time they won.
2012 was the last McLaren podium, or not podium win, and then 2010 was the last time they were 1-2. I'm pretty sure is the.
And I don't know if anybody found this stat out this week, but because of McLaren going 1-2 this week, it's the only time so far this season that a team's gone 1-2.
Yeah.
So I think from the start of qualifying to the sprint race, McLaren clearly like outpaced anybody else in the team, and it continues to push. Like I actually don't really know how the constructors is going to go for third place. Like kudos to Ferrari. Like they had a decent week with like obviously at the end having Sergio Perez get that 5-second penalty. I was able to get Leclerc up to 4th, but I was very impressed with how they raced this weekend. Like I knew it was going to be a tough track, but anything happens at Monza, the celebrations at Monza. It was actually nice to see the fans be able to kind of get close, because when Gasly won it in 2020, it was very eerie, and those that watch Formula One, they know that the Tifosi, when they come out at Monza, it's just a line of fans, and it can just go from that one side of the track to the other. Another really important fact this weekend was Valtteri Bottas went from 20th on the grid to 3rd. So whoever picked him on the fantasy clearly. And Andrew is waving on the cam. But yeah, so anyone I want to talk about Bottas's beautiful performance and his beautiful press conference afterwards?
It's funny how fast he can go when he really doesn't give a shit.
You mean when Mercedes actually lets him race and he's not
honestly,
orders?
Honestly, it's just it's insane. Like he was in a rocket ship all weekend.
Yeah.
From from free practice to qualifying, then taking pole position in the sprint race. Unfortunately, had to drop back because of the grid penalty. But he even said to his engineer that he's finishing on the podium this weekend, and he talked the talk and he walked the walk. That's for sure. And it was honestly, it was great to see, because I don't know how many more moments we're gonna have. He might have in an Alfa Romeo next season. I'm not, just because of the car. I think it's like, I think this is gonna be one of the last years. I think Valtteri's gonna have that podium those podium opportunities.
How many years do you think he's going to be in the sport? I'm calling 2 more with Alfa Romeo.
I think it depends on how the first season with Alfa Romeo goes. Like if with the new rules next year, things are half decent. And I mean, we're seeing Gio do surprisingly well in this car in the last few races, at least in qualifying, and even in the sprint, he still kept it pretty tight. So I mean, if they're able to continue improving on the car here, I mean, he may not be getting podium position, but he'll still be finishing top 10 just as a testament to his skill, I think, assuming they're keeping the momentum with the car. So if things go well next year, maybe he'll be around for like another 4, but I can't see him sticking around too much more than that because the guy's in his 30s now. I mean, even Hamilton, there have been rumors of him only sticking around for a couple more seasons at this point. So I think we're going to see a little bit more turnover with some of these guys that are kind of older drivers, but still, you know, pretty young overall, moving into different stages of their careers.
And I think especially because with F2, with some of the drivers that are kind of still performing very well, I think I saw I think I saw an article about like people pressuring to get Antonio Giovinazzi out of his seat for one of the new guys in there. I think I saw something like $30 million they were offering Alfa Romeo. Some of these like older guys, sorry, you gotta go. Maybe Danny Rick can stay a little bit longer, but after today, he solidified himself for a while, but I can only imagine what's going to happen next.
And I think that's the big piece now is that the sponsorship deals and the kind of money you can bring to a team to elevate the car is really a key factor here. So, you know, if someone in F2 has got an incredible sponsor who's going to be willing to put more on the table once their driver is promoted to F1, I think we're going to see some more shifting around the cars when some of these contracts come due again. I know most seats are kind of locked in for the next season at this point, but there's still a chance of a lot of movement in the near future, I think.
I think Haas sort of set a precedent with that last year, with taking Nikita and taking Mick based on big sponsorship deals. I think that's why, like, I think it was Guan Yu Zhou was looking at that Alfa Romeo seat for 30 million, because he's got big sponsors from China willing to, you know, willing to push his seat. So I think with Haas setting that precedence, you're going to start seeing that more, especially for like the lower teams who need that money to become more competitive with like the midfield.
I think it also was like probably a smart move by Haas by removing as much as we love Grosjean and Kevin Magnussen, but I think at that point you know, it's time to maybe change the tone because I don't think they even scored a point last year. And bringing in two new young guns, it's like, why not just do this and just try something new? And they can bring new sponsors, new things. Like, because look, the Netflix series has really blown this sport up in popularity. I mean, Jordan, I watched this. I started literally the 2020 season, so
it's a good season. Like,
I'm curious. I think this is going to be a great episode in Drive to Survive for the 2021 season. Just for all the insanity we saw on camera and all the reactions that we saw happen between the crash with Verstappen and Hamilton, which just listening into some of the radios and seeing how Max was when he got out of his car was pretty intense. And then just, you know, we heard so much of what was going on at McLaren, but you know it was about 90 times more intense over the radios and kind of back in the paddock. So I think it'll be a fun one.
Before we deep dive into like the crash, I just want to say that I think the FIA has done a tremendous job with safety, and this was a big case, especially with the Halo this past weekend, literally saving Lewis's life. And anyone who doesn't like a Halo, you need to get out of the dinosaur age, because otherwise we would have seen a death on track this weekend. And thank God the FIA stepped up and did the Halo when they did back a few years ago.
Go ahead, Erica. Sorry.
Just it was intense. I mean, because looking at it originally, I think most of the camera views were kind of overhead, a little bit pulled away from it, but there were cameramen that were right focused on this as they were coming off the track and at the perfect angle to kind of capture some really intense shots of this crash go down. And absolutely, you're looking at that. It did hit his head. He hit his head and it scuffed his helmet. And just imagine how much worse it could have been had the Halo not been there to take some of the impact and stop the car from lowering even further onto him than it did.
Yeah,
Isn't it
because
great?
without the halo there, like Verstappen's body doesn't get smashed at that point. Like it goes straight down instead.
Exactly.
So, yeah, like it baffles my mind people who think the halo is a bad idea for the sport. Ooh, sorry, the camera angle's not very good from there, but who cares?
Exactly. If the drivers can drive with this there and still do just as well and still be putting up like record times and extremely entertaining races, you sitting on your couch can deal with this.
I just think it's crazy as somebody who like would sometimes go and watch old videos of like F1 and just see some of the cars that they would drive, and like when Schumacher raced, of like how open it was, and like even Nicky Lauder when that had that big crash where he literally burnt his half his face, and then within a couple of weeks he's like, I'm gonna go back to race again. It just really it's kind of eye opener. So who's at fault, Max or Hamilton? I generally I'll start off, and also I think I think it's very clear in a couple of the videos that I've seen that I if Lewis was coming over, like he was coming out and he kind of like he was like inching over, and it kind of put Max in a difficult spot, and I really think that unfortunately, like I think it was definitely Lewis's fault. And I don't understand how Max gets a 3 grid penalty.
I'm inclined to agree with you on that one. I mean, as much as they were kind of neck and neck going into that first turn of that chicane, it was kind of clear looking to see that Hamilton was braking kind of late and not as hard as he could have. And Max did have his nose out in front, so kind of had dibs over the position there, especially since Hamilton was the one challenging him at that point. And you don't have Max hitting those bumps at the edge of the track to launch his car like that if Hamilton gives him enough room and kind of applied the brakes a little bit more going into that turn. So as I was shocked when I saw the grid penalty, honestly. I mean, when we've seen some of the calls that they've made after Silverstone and stuff where they just give someone like a 5-second penalty for some pretty obvious and flagrant stuff that's been happening, to have a 3-place grid penalty for a driver that really, to the majority of people that I've seen, and I think even F1 did a poll and like 78% of people thought that Hamilton was at fault and not Max, and that the grid penalty was kind of overkill. It's just kind of baffling to me that the FIA is kind of making the calls that they're making.
I'm gonna play a little devil's advocate here in the sense that so earlier on in the race in turn 4, similar situation happened in the chicane when Max, I guess, was maybe out ahead of Hamilton, but essentially pushed Hamilton wide, and he went over the 2 sausage curves back onto the track. In a way, like it definitely Hamilton's bad. Like Hamilton, like literally turned right. It was a late turn. So I think 50% of the blame's on Hamilton, but I also think 50% of the blame's on Verstappen, in the sense that there was that runoff area that he could go to avoid the crash. But I don't think you should be penalizing one person. It's either penalize both or don't penalize any, because it is a racing incident. It's not, you can't blame Max at 100% fault for that crash, when at best it's 50-50. All right, well, like worst case, like to me, it's 50-50. It's a racing incident. I really don't think like in any way, shape, or form that Max should be getting a penalty. Either you give both the penalty, one, I guess Max for being, I guess, quote unquote, careless and not taking to the exit that he could have, but also B to Hamilton for literally diving into the corner and cutting him off. Like, Max even said it afterwards. Like, you have to, like, there is this point where you have to give space and race fair. And that was not racing fair. That was like, it was Hamilton getting pushed out, but I can see Hamilton's frustration as to why he did it, because of it happened to him earlier in the race. So I see where both sides of the story are coming from, but I think FIA's decision to give Max a 3-place grid penalty is ridiculous. And beg to wonder if they're really favoring Lewis to try and come back in this title fight and get his 8th. Raise some questions. I don't know.
I think that, now you mention it, like, I think both of them should get a penalty, because if you're going to give Max for that, like, clearly it can go both ways. And if you can just settle it and just be like, listen, you guys are both getting grid penalties, because I think they need to do a gearbox change soon. I think so it's like, maybe if they both do it next week, well, now let Hamilton get it, but like if Verstappen gets his 3 grid penalties, like, okay, you know what, maybe I'll take my gearbox now. Like, does he feel that comfortable in Russia? We're not going to talk about Russia today. We're going to focus on Russia next week's episode. But when, like, is this an opportunity where Red Bull now sees, okay, you know, look, we lost this fight on the 3 grid. Do we just take our gearbox penalty now and then just hope that we can just salvage Russia? I'm curious to know where that would go.
I think that's a possibility. I mean, some of the teams were kind of already discussing that Russia was a race they could potentially take those penalties for if they're making changes to the engine and whatnot. I mean, Bottas kind of already took that hit this week in some capacity, but we're going to see it soon. I think the question is, if it was Sergio Perez, Red Bull would have no issue letting him take the gearbox penalty and go back because they know that he's capable of overtaking. But we haven't really seen too much of Max starting that far back in the grid in recent times and having to fight his way to the front. Definitely there's times where he's not on the front row and he's a little bit behind that, but to be like a 13th or potentially even further back than that, depending on the alterations made, would be interesting to see. And I don't know how Christian Horner and the rest of the team would feel about that.
Do you think he would just get angry? Like, he would probably be just frustrated and is not used to fighting in the middle of the grid anymore?
I think there's potential for that, but I think it's less on Max's capability and more on the team's trust for him to do that.
I also think Max gets really upset too when he's like leading a Grand Prix and then something out of his control happens. Like, for instance, the bad pit stop, right? The 11-second pit stop that happened this week. And then he kind of gets pissed off and he's like, okay, I got to get back up to the front. I think if he has that mindset of him starting at the back and having to work his way forward to a point of like to a podium finish, I think he'll be more so determined rather than frustrated. And I think that would bode well for Max going forward in that case. Because I think you got to take the penalty. You might as well take the penalty now. You're already getting 3 grid places behind. Why not just, bite the bullet and just go for just take the penalty now and just be prepared for the final, because the races are going to be won in Texas. They're going to be won in Mexico. They're going to be won in Brazil, right? That's where you're going to win your championship this year, not Russia.
It's also not a really exciting track, but we'll get into that next week. That's just my opinion. Other let's see, what are some other things that I have written down here? Perez getting the 5-second grid penalty.
How stupid was that on Red Bull's part not to let Leclerc pass?
So stupid, especially after what happened during the sprint race on Saturday, where there was a similar instance and he almost got a penalty then for waiting too long to give the spot back, and there was talk about it on the radio. I don't understand why this was a shock that he got this penalty.
Like, if I'm Hubert, I'm saying, like, look, give it back. We have a faster car. You're going to pass him anyways, like later on down the road. You know what I mean? So like, I really didn't understand why do you take a chance on the 5-second penalty? Because he clearly overtook him off the track. And I don't care what he says about getting pushed off. He like rumbled over those strips and he would just cut right in front of him. I was just like, dude, give the place back and you're going to pass him on the next DRS zone anyways. I just thought it was really ridiculous on Red Bull's part. And again, those are key points in the race.
Exactly.
I could not understand that one.
Okay, you might have to refresh my memory. Perez has won 1 race this year, and did he go on and do another podium?
Yes.
Yeah, he's got another podium. I think Baku was the one where he ended up finishing on top, correct? After a pretty hectic race with some.
Right. And France was the second one.
Okay.
Right.
That's when Valtteri yelled at his engineering team about why didn't they listen to him about it being a two-stopper.
Okay.
Go ahead, Erica. Yeah.
I was gonna say we gotta talk about primetime Valtteri after the race.
So yeah, what was your favorite meme? I think we've all the whole team I think has said that on the F1 trolls meme, the one where it was photoshopped of him looking at the screen of the crash and then looking back and going, Erica, I think you have to pull it up.
Just between that and the like mimicking the meme of the girl with the burning house behind her. I mean, so many good moments, or kind of, what was it, the Jeremy Irons, like, oh no, anyway, just
yeah, oh no, anyway, yeah, that's the one.
I also like the one where it goes, they said that for like the Red Bull engineer says, okay, Max, we need you to finish on top of Hamilton in this race. And then it just shows Max being on top of Hamilton in the crash.
taking it a wee bit too seriously there, but it's all good.
I think one of my favorites, I don't know if people caught this, but I think it was either I think it was after the sprint. Daniel Ricciardo was getting interviewed and he started to try to speak Italian, and F1 Troll posted of the Inglorious Bastards where Brad Pitt is walking in when they have to act like they're Italians, and it's like Ricciardo at Monza be like, and he's like, Buongiorno.
I think it surprised everyone when he whipped that out. It was like, oh, not what I would expect from a part Italian dude from Perth, Australia, but here we are. Okay.
Yeah, my buddies and I were texting and we're like, he speaks Italian now. Which I guess he should.
Mystery.
Honestly, what does Daniel Ricciardo not do?
Wash his feet, apparently, based on Lando's reaction to doing the shoe.
To be fair, that's like 2 hours of just pure sweat and just filth growing up in that shoe. Oh, my favorite shoe though on the podium was Zach Brown's. He literally was taking it like a funnel. It was just like, give it to me. Ah!
It's like one of those dads that goes back to a college party and he hasn't like partied in like 20, 30 years. He's like, let's go.
Zach Brown is literally that dad.
It's old school, man. It's like old school when Will Ferrell and them go back to campus. That's what it was like with Zach Brown.
I was expecting him to yell, we're going to go streaking in the paddock in 10 minutes.
Low key though, one of the other ones that came to mind was, you know how there's the meme of the guy spraying champagne in his face and he's like third on the podium or something, but they had the Rick Norris, Bottas is just standing there normal, and then there's Zach off on the side also just going ham with champagne.
Oh, and then I forgot about the post race conference, and Ricardo's like, wait, Bottas, you didn't do a shoe? He's like, no. I didn't do it. It's like, how do you have not done a shoot? No, I just never did.
Danny Rick was so heartbroken.
I would have given you a shoe, and he's like, no, I always like. You could tell Bottas was like, I've avoided it on purpose. Like I purposefully blend into the background during that moment.
I love how it goes like, I love how Ricardo goes like, yeah, but your girlfriend's Australian, so you got to be into some weird stuff.
Oh my god, just. Wow, it's just such a race. So many good memeable moments coming out of this. And we also had, I'm going to butcher the guy's name, but Ferrari had brought out the TikTok legend Cabby, who like has been running around with Carlos Sainz doing all kinds of dumb stuff, like trying to get into his car and then just showing him like the appropriate way to do it. And oh, it's just so fun. I love it. There's so much fun to be had with some of these younger drivers who are kind of just embracing the social media side of things.
I also love the memes about how Vin Diesel was there, like on the grid, and Usain Bolt there, and he goes like, yeah, Vin Diesel reminding Usain Bolt that F1, the F stands for family.
It's so good.
They also had the Italian, I think it was the 100-meter gold medalist there too, and then it's actually really funny. So I don't know if anyone caught this, but at the formation lap, or when they're about to start, he did like the photos, but then the photographer kept taking more photos of him pretending to go, and all you see is you F1 steward person was just like kind of like get off.
That is a sweet photo though, to be fair. Like imagine like that'd be like Instagram goals right there.
That's your DP forever.
Oh,
That's yeah, hands down.
I would probably like my own photo if I post that.
Be one of those people.
So yeah, I'm just trying to think if there's anything else from the race that stood out. Oh, Mr. Saturday, George Russell, third race in the points. So getting only excited to see what he can do in a Mercedes car next year, guys.
Awesome.
Ricci, do you think Ferrari were kind of sandbagging this weekend a little bit?
Well, I think, yeah,
because Charles was like, "Oh, don't expect anything good from us," and then boom, P4, P6. Like, oh, I'm sorry, Charles. Yeah, it wasn't very good at all.
Because I had low hopes going into this weekend too, because just from the track record from 2020, I just didn't think that this was going to be a good weekend, and I purposely did not pick them on my fantasy. I avoided all Ferrari because I just didn't feel comfortable picking them this week, because especially with it being the temple of speed. But I think they had to try to play it off just because of the pressure of having a home race, and the Italian media in particular has been just like dogging Ferrari the last 2 years, especially after last year's performance. Like, am I happy that we came 4th and 6th? Like, absolutely. Did I anticipate it this week? This weekend? Absolutely not. I didn't think that we were going to be there. And like, obviously kudos to McLaren, and like, it just made the constructors just more interesting.
What an absolute nightmare though for AlphaTauri.
Oh my goodness. I mean,
go ahead, Erica. Sorry.
I know that obviously there were some issues with the cars ahead of time because there were some crashes and some problems during FP and qualifying and whatnot. But to have one car, because Tsunoda didn't even start, did he?
No.
And then on the first lap, you just see Gasly limping around one of the corners partway through. I mean, I think a lot of us assumed he got in that tussle with Giovinazzi, was it? Where kind of coming out of the chicane going through like turn 3 or 4, I can't remember exactly where it was, but I have no words. And he had done so well in qualifying and in the sprint. I was kind of excited to see where he was going to go in this race. If he wouldn't win, at least maybe get another podium. But it was not even remotely in the cards.
Yeah, I guess going into the fan questions, that was actually going to be one of the questions that have been submitted by fans is where do you think AlphaTauri ends up this year? And could they make a difference in the midfield? And I mean, it's going to be, it kind of reminded me of when Ferrari both DNF'd or did not last Monza race. Like, this is devastating where you can't even finish one of your drivers at a home arena. Oh, it's home race. Sorry.
It's like, home arena. What sport are you talking about right now, man?
I think they could finish. They can finish 5th. They can beat Renault. Like, they're only 9 points behind Alpine. Sorry, why did I say Renault? Alpine. My apologies.
But they're Alpine Renault, so technically, it kind of works.
Yeah, they're the sport. They're sponsored by the sports car manufacturer of Renault itself.
Isn't it kind of funny when the drivers were doing the Beyond the Grid or like one of those things, and they just could not announce what their team titles names were? Like, yeah, Lewis is like, I think I got it right. I don't know if you guys saw that.
Oh, my favorite was when Sebastian Vettel didn't say anything for R, and he could have said Red Bull. You know, the team won 4 championships with.
No.
Renault. Oh no.
Sorry, Erica.
My favorite's like when Mazepin had no clue for H, and then they were like, "Are you kidding me?" And he goes like, "Oh, Haas."
No, I think to go back to the question of where I think AlphaTauri can stand. I mean, because like they were, I think Andrew, you just said they're only
9 points back.
They're 11 points behind.
11. I can't do math. Jesus Christ.
Aren't you the one who's like an
Yeah, I got a math degree. That's mental math. I thought 4 became a 6.
Yeah, I mean, I would have said that they were pretty competitive before this week, and I still like to think that they are. I'm hoping this is a bit of an anomaly. I think with them re-signing the 2 drivers, they're holding hopes that they can help develop the team and kind of keep things progressing in a forward way. I mean, Tsunoda's not had the best season, but sometimes he has surprised us and done relatively well. Everyone's shaking their head no at me.
No, not
I
you.
know,
It's a
but
message Ricci sent to me. Said if I got my grade 10, I'm like, no.
It's a Trailer Park Boy reference if anyone watches Trailer Park Boys. Sorry, but go ahead, Erica. My apologies.
but like Gasly's done so well this year and has scored them some pretty major points to keep them competitive in those standings there. And I really think that between Alpine and AlphaTauri, it will come down to later in this season, assuming that this, like I said before, is kind of a one-off instance for a team that's done pretty good this year.
Alonso's having a tear lately. Like he's like consistently been getting some points for the team.
Comeback king, man.
Sonoda really has to pick it up if he's gonna want to. If they're gonna want to finish fifth, though, I think like Gasly's form alone though could beat Ocon and could beat Alonso, but on any given day, I think Alpine could outbeat. Like they work well as a team together, and I just don't think Monza suited their package well. So I do think though that you'll see a strong effort from Alpine to finish the season. I mean, especially when we go into tracks that are pretty, they're gonna be pretty fun to watch. Like Brazil's track's gonna be fast. The Saudi Arabia track in Jeddah is supposed to be one of the fastest. Supposed to be the fastest street circuit of the entire year. Abu Dhabi's a bit of a boring one because it's not really one for overtaking, but it's final race this season. Anything can happen there as well. So I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, we'll talk about it next week though. But yeah, this Russia, I find the Russian track is really boring to watch. It is so bad. But hey, Valtteri loves it there. He won it last year, and I think he could do the same thing again.
I'm just picturing for next week. Next week that he's gonna be racing, and then it's gonna be like Valtteri, it's James, and like I don't know if he can like pull out his radio and just like no radio communication.
Well, then we just see like something go flying from his car.
Yeah.
So on that note, so as we get into the fan questions, so that was one question from our dear fans, and I just want to say, everyone, thank you for the questions. We love these questions, and I think this is so I want this on record. Andrew and Erica, would you do a shoey? Yes or no?
Absolutely. It's disgusting, but what way to celebrate? Why not celebrate in the fun way? You only live life once. Make the most of it.
So
do a shoey, people. Do a shoey.
Okay, Erica, go ahead.
So here's my thing. Exactly. I only live once. Why would I take this one go at existence to put a stanky shoe to my mouth and drink beer from it? And this is coming.
It's your own shoe, though. Trust
me, I know how stanky my own feet are. I'm not letting this happen, man. But for me, part of it is just PTSD from, I don't know, that was what, like 8 years ago now when neck noms were a thing and everyone was getting nominated to like drink beers in weird ways. And so many guys in my res were doing it out of shoes or like hockey skates and stuff like that.
Ooh,
and I'm
yeah.
just, like you don't even have to be the one doing the shoey to partake in the experience by being nearby. So
One West was a bit of a time though, wasn't it, eh?
You know how it was. You were just across the way there. It was, as much as everyone thought we were going to be the quiet, nerdy business kids, it ended up being quite a different story by the end of the year. So
the way she goes, boys. I will never forget when I experienced my first shoey at a Buffalo Bills game, and the guy had like worker boots and just like poured and just went at it, and like I've never seen a section go more crazy in my life. Okay, I actually have a suggestion. Winner of the podiums should shoey.
So wait, oh, I would, I'm all for it.
Or even the losers have to shoey.
How about, yeah.
Whoever gets third place.
Winner gets to make whoever do a shoey live on camera.
I feel like I just put a target on my back for that one.
No, I feel like if like either one of you win, I'm going to be the target. And I'll do it for the pod.
So
Just as long as Danny Rick comes on, FYI.
yeah. So number one, Danny Rick, multiple times this pod, we would love to have you on. And number two, write in the comment section below, who do you think deserves the shoey? Myself, Erica, or Andrew? Like, we would love to hear what the people think. We've been blown away by some of these comments. On to a next question. So we got another one from my fantasy group. I think you guys will like this. For the FIA said last week that they're going to meet with current and prospective PU suppliers for next year. What are your thoughts on who could potentially come back?
Well, isn't Honda leaving, but Red Bull's taking over?
It's, from my understanding, Honda's agreed to keep producing for them, but they're not taking the same level of interest and ownership over the team and its activities. I don't really understand what that means.
Well, I feel like you'll definitely have McLaren. I'm sorry, you'll have Mercedes, you'll have Ferrari, you'll have Honda in some form of capacity, because I believe it's in 2025 is when Red Bull's going to start manufacturing their own engines for Formula One.
Interesting.
Yeah, they're building a facility right now that was broken ground this year. But I think with all the regulation changes coming up, maybe that had to deal with. There's probably a lot of questions or a lot of unknowns still on what constitutes, like what can be constituted in the engine or in the power unit for next year. So I wonder if they're doing that, but I can't see anybody else coming in. Like I don't see Toyota coming back as an engine supplier. I think it's going to be mainly the same four.
Yeah, I feel like, especially with just how competitive this not only this season, but yeah, the four main team or engine providers are, it'd be very hard. And then who is willing to take a risk on I wouldn't say call them nobodies, but like a fifth person, like, unless, because this is not a cheap sport. You can't just show up with an engine and be like, I'm going to put it in your car and you're going to win me races. So,
Well, because who are the PU suppliers right now? We've got, well, like obviously, like,
so we have
Mercedes.
Ferrari, we'll have Mercedes, we have Renault. So it's called Red Bull Powertrains is what is going to be taking over for Honda.
Okay.
I think that's the main four. I don't know if Volkswagen's coming in at all. Maybe. But from what I'm reading right now, it looks like the big thing that they're focusing in is on 2026. And
Yes,
their use of net zero carbon sustainable fuels and going to that, becoming like a net zero carbon, because F1's done again a very big job in terms of reducing their greenhouse gas emissions and providing opportunities to do that. So I think they're trying to push those power units to be net zero carbon by 2026.
Well, and I was just taking a quick little gander here, and I know they were talking, this looks like it's a little outdated now. It's from early July, but Porsche and Audi were also involved in some of the discussions that were going on at that time for 2025 with, the similar goals, like you're talking about, like sustainable fuel, things of that sort, which I find surprising. I mean, I think of performance cars in a way when I think of Porsche and Audi, but I don't think necessarily of the professional racing cars to the same capacity as what we see in F1 or even like NASCAR and some of these other sports, right?
I do believe that they have been engine suppliers or PU suppliers in the past, as well as they've had teams in F1 before. So maybe they're trying to, because like for instance, like Aston Martin, right? I guess in a way too, that's more of a sports luxury car. You don't expect them to have a team, but they do.
They have a nice 007 thing on the cars this weekend.
Ironically, Lance Stroll finished 7th on the grid.
Hey, that's fun.
So wait, what you're telling?
He finished P007.
So what you're telling me, a Brit won Silverstone, a Dutch won the Dutch Grand Prix, half Italian won Monza. So like, if Russia is next, does that mean the Torpedo comes back and wins?
God, no.
Or Mazepin?
Yeah, Mazepin wins if everyone decides to crash into the wall in the first lap.
Or a situation was at the US Grand Prix 2003, where only 6 drivers ended up racing in protest because everyone else protested the tires. It was the
Oh.
Michelin versus
Was it Bridgestone? No.
No.
Or is it good? Or no, Goodyear was Michelin. I'm trying to remember that. No, it's a good point.
I mean, I think it would be hilarious if Mazepin came within even just like
A points finish, if that.
point. Yeah, that would be, I think, enough to warrant the excitement that we got from the Brit winning Silverstone, a Dutchman winning at Zandvoort, things of that sort. I think we're gonna see the end of this fun little streak we had going on for the last while, because it's just an insurmountable challenge to kind of see anything of that nature happen in Russia, in my opinion, at least.
So does it count as a win if he beats his teammate, though?
Interesting.
Because Gunter Steiner said himself, they're really not racing anybody but themselves on the track this season.
I mean, if you're Haas, maybe that counts as a win, but
so I'd like to correct the record. It was actually the 2005 US Grand Prix, and it was the 6 cars using the Bridgestone tires, Ferrari, Jordan, and Miranda. And the remaining 14 on team drivers used Michelin tires, and then they pitted. So, yes.
Interesting. So at one point, I think one season there was like you could have chosen either use the Bridgestone or you use the Goodyear tires.
instead of it being mandated like it is now with Pirelli, even I think it depends on the specific like soft, medium, and hard tires they dictate too, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. I learned something new today.
I love these fan questions. They're fun.
Yeah, I shout out to my fantasy my F1 fantasy group. They get some killer questions, and again, anyone's got a question, put it down in the comment section below. We love questions. But so next week we're going to talk, so obviously we're not talking Russian Grand Prix a lot this week, so I think the goal for next week is we're going to be talking about what our thoughts are going into the Russian Grand Prix, and just seeing if you know, if Verstappen and Hamilton can pull it back together and see them compete. But also, I think next week we're gonna do a special tribute to, I think, one of the greatest Formula One drivers ever to race, Michael Schumacher. As we're recording this, this day on Wednesday, September 15th. They just released his documentary on Netflix. And I know Andrew's seen it. Eric and I need to see it. So we're going to spend some time in next week's episode dedicating it to one of the greatest drivers ever to race, race ever in F1, Michael Schumacher, and talk about our thoughts of his F1 documentary. I was getting emotional just thinking about it. Sorry. Yeah, no, just really excited to kind of talk about that. I think on that note, I'm just going to turn it over. If there's any last questions or thoughts from the team, Andrew, Erica, anything else to think about going into, I guess, a rest week, I guess we can call it.
I am excited for when I was a little bummed that there wasn't a race this week. A quad would be a little tough, I think, on the bodies, but I'm looking forward to next week. Even if it is Russia, you just really get to appreciate, not having a race this week. I apologize, that was my dryer.
No, I'm super, I was sad when there wasn't a race this week, but again, like Andrew said, I think it's unsustainable for pretty well everyone involved in the sport to push it through 4 weeks in a row. I had a great time watching Monza last week. It was one of the first times I've watched a race at the Temple of Speed just because of what my own schedules have been over time. So being able to participate in really like an event like that was super cool to watch and see, even if it was just on my TV and not out at a bar or even on site or anything. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what happens this coming week, just with some of the choices the teams are going to make for their cars, and kind of seeing how everyone's going to duke it out to fight for a position in the constructors championship for the rest of the season. So I think this will kind of be setting the tone potentially for a little while to come.
Yeah, and I think for me, anytime we can kind of go back to Monza and watch a race there, like anything obviously can happen there, and especially being like for Ferrari, it's a big deal to race home. Like it was just kind of exciting to actually see that and see fans in the stadium. I don't know about you guys, but that's one of the coolest things. One of the greatest things that I think this sport has missed is actually having fans. Especially last year, I can't remember many races actually having fans. So very, very happy to start to see them in there. Yeah, I could only imagine what's going to be said in the news for the next couple of days leading up to maybe next week when we record episode 6, and obviously looking forward to talking about the pod. And I guess on that note, I just want to thank you guys. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Erica. Another great episode. And I'm going to say it again, Danny Rick, buddy, love to have you on the pod.
Erica would love to have you in her DMs too. So
yes, that is very true. So make sure to hit that subscribe button. Follow us on YouTube, also on Twitch. Oh, and forgot to mention, we are on SoundCloud, but we have maxed out the free usage. So we're only going to have 4 episodes on that. So we're mostly going to be posting on my YouTube channel at xricci. And again, thank you guys so much for the support. It's Ricci, it's Andrew.
Bye, everybody.
And it's Erica.
bye.
Thank you guys so much and have a great day.